Well, this is starting the second recipe on the 7310. Might as well go through what I've gone through, or go through what I've done so far. It's kind of a funny cylinder. It is 6-port, 3 transfer ports on either side. It has a large transfer port on the exhaust side, or towards the exhaust side, kind of midship of the center of the cylinder. That one opens at 123 degrees after top dead center. So that opens kind of a normal timing. And then it has quad transfers that are fed by one tunnel, bottom fed on the side, that opens at 144, and they barely open. I don't know what their ideas were on this as far as design, or if it was a way for them to once again get around EPA in the United States, but obviously they qualified for EPA regulations, so that's the only thing I can guess. The saw ran really good stock, couple seconds behind a 565, couple seconds behind a 572. It runs with a 372, especially in X torque. The OE ones, I didn't have one here to test, and it wouldn't have been stock anyway, so wouldn't have done us any good. So far, my thoughts on the saw: smooth. I mean, it runs good, it idles good, it's easy to tune, adjustable carburetor. Limiters are easy to pull, so when you do port work, you have ample fuel there. It's not like the 500 series, like the 575, 576s that struggle to feed enough fuel. This thing definitely has the capacity to feed enough fuel. My first round on port work, I ended up with the exhaust at 107. Had the transfers, or the exhaust side transfer, I left alone, opened at 124, and then I raised the actual transfers for the quads to 126. Now they are staggered a couple degrees, partially because it was very difficult to raise them. The side caps, you can see it here, the side caps limit you in how high you can raise it. So essentially I ground this out, used a high temp epoxy, filled in the cap itself, so it gave me the ability to raise the transfers where I wanted them timed. Basically null and voiding their, I'm assuming, their EPA emissions kind of plan to pass emissions. Did that on both sides, opened up the lower feed quite a bit. It's got a couple of degrees of ignition advance. I know I said in my last video you can't go that much on these, so it's just got a couple degrees. I kind of played with it, went too far into the 32-34 range, and it misfired and popped and banged, and basically pre-detonation. Yesterday I went back into it after running several tanks through it and kind of get a feel for what I wanted it to do and what it needed. And after pulling the cylinder off, I could see that the top of my piston didn't have quite as much wash as I'd like. My flow was coming up and over the top of the piston instead of flat across the piston like I'd like to see. So it cleans off the top of that piston, and it flushes out the old charge and pushes it back. So on the second time around, I flattened the roof of the transfers on the quads a little bit. Had to go even further into the epoxy to do so, but now we've got more of a shelf. We're going to try to push that air flatter across the piston, get a little bit more efficient charge in there. I didn't even write down what the squish is. It's somewhere in the, I think it's still 0.035036, somewhere in there. It's got quite a large squish, which I've never been one to push it all the way down to 0.020 if you don't have to. Builds heat. You can argue about that all day long. But yeah, I'll pop this off once I give you a better idea of the caps. Gave it a couple more degrees on the intake as well. Didn't even measure it. I was just going off a feel, so I could go back and measure that if anybody's interested. But you can see right there, you can see the cap and how it's epoxied and blended back in, and on the inside that gave me the room to lift it up a little bit. Going back to the saw, the filtration system, it's awesome. I think 12 or 13 tanks I've got through it already, and there isn't even a film on the inside of the carburetor inlet. Now going to the carb work, I did do a video on basically everything I did do to the carb. Here's your filter. It's perfectly clean inside of there. Granted, I keep a sharp chain, but it's doing an excellent job of keeping everything clean. I did open this up, and then of course all the carb work, the butterfly shafts, I thinned those, opened up the Ventura a little bit, get a little bit more flow through there. I had to richen the saw considerably to get her to 4-stroke quite nice. For the saw itself, going back to that, it feels pretty nimble. Yes, it is about a half a pound heavier than a 565 or a 572. You're not going to notice. You're going to have a 28-inch bar on it, 24 minimum. You're not going to notice the weight. I think what I'm going to do is throw one of my Versa cuts on it, get a little bit lighter bar. That'll give me a little bit better lean back to the weight. It balances really well with a 28, but it's on the edge of its balancing point with a 28. The only issue I've actually had with the saw is the decomp leaked. Did from day one, so I took that out and I took some valve lapping and then lapped the actual valve on the decomp itself, and now it's been dry. I haven't had an issue with that since. It wasn't a huge leak, but it was leaking nonetheless. That is the one and only issue I've had with the saw. We have my muffler mod. There's quite a large hole back here. I'd say I'm about 85–90% the size of the outlet on the exhaust port. And the stock outlet here is quite large already. I left that alone. It's got a nice pop to it. I'm sure you've heard it in the videos already. If you got any questions about it, just ask me in the comments. About as fuel efficient as anything else, maybe not as fuel efficient as some of the X-Torques. If you leave the Strato part alone, I tend to not leave the Strato part alone. But yeah, if you have any questions about it, shoot me a note in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer them. Seems like an amazing appearance from Echo as far as I'm concerned. It's actually, I've already decided it's staying in my stable. I'm going to keep fiddling with it a little bit, see if I can get a couple more percentages out of it. But I'm going to keep it. I like the balance of it. I like it super smooth, easy to tune. Going down that road, absolutely one of the easiest saws I've worked on in years. I mean, this is going back to like 266s, 288s, 272s, where, I mean, it's so simple. 4 bolts. You've got a partition wall that's connected to the cylinder itself. Carb comes out easy. I literally break this thing down in around 3 minutes now. Cylinder off, carb out, and that's not even really rushing through it. I can just boom, 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 pop through this thing. That's including removing the top handle. It is the easiest saw built to work on right now, in my opinion. We're going to go back out. I haven't done any test cuts with it after the new numbers. I did a couple heat cycles on it, make sure everything's okay, make sure I didn't have an air leak. And we're going to have the 28 on it again, and we're going to see how it compares to the old time cut I had with the 565 that is ported. Yeah. Oh yeah, and this is one thing I noticed earlier too. When you're really hammering on this, it's almost like gel. It's got a gel bumper right here. So on a lot of saws, when you're pulling on them too hard, your handle will run into your plastic here, and it'll translate a lot of vibration through. This is an amazing touch right here. You can feel it hit it, but none of the vibration from the chassis comes through to the handle. It is It's brilliant. It's just little things like this that they thought of. There's also a rubber bump underneath here, right there. Just super well thought out. I mean, they took their time with this. Looks like they refined it quite well. It is not the blocky echoes that you're used to dealing with. It is, besides not being Strato, an excellent representation of a modern saw. So yeah, I think I rambled enough. I'm going to throw the 28 on it, and then I'm going to graft that video onto here, and we'll see where we're at. Hopefully I picked up 3 or 4 seconds, and it's officially faster than my 572s and my 565. So yeah. Here we go, recipe number 2. And of course it's starting to rain, and this thing's loud, so I got my muffs today. We need to be 1 minute 10 seconds to make it officially faster than my 565 and my 572 recipe. Let's see what we got.